In this video, I'm going to go through how to do a leak down test with a Harbor Freight tester. I'll show you how it works on a lawnmower, but it works on automobiles as well. Unlike a compression test, this test, it'll guide you onto where is the compression leaving the engine. It'll give you a percentage of how much compression you're actually losing. The gauge works a little different. Instead of using the actual compression from the lawnmower, you introduce compressed air to see how much air you're losing. Unlike a compression test, your cylinder has to be top dead center and on the compression stroke. You can find top dead center by putting a balloon on this tube, and then when you pull really slowly, you'll see the balloon inflate. When the balloon inflates, you know you're starting your compression stroke. The balloon clearly shows that the piston is pushing air to the front of the cylinder. Now, in order to get top dead center, we're going to need to remove this hose and put something like a wooden dowel rod to touch the top of the piston. I like to use wood because it won't damage the inside of the piston or the head. If you use a screwdriver, you could bind things in there and actually damage the engine. Now, as you slowly pull the cord, you'll be able to feel the piston move towards the front. With a lawnmower, you can only go in one direction. You want to pull really slow because you don't want the piston to start going to the downstroke. Once you're at top dead center, you can go ahead and screw in the tube. At this point, both valves are closed and the piston is at the very top of the cylinder. So we'll hook up shop air from the compressor and calibrate the gauges. You want to make sure that you don't put more than 100 psi on this gauge. It could damage it. To calibrate this gauge, we're going to bring the air up and down until the black arrow on the second gauge is on 0. This gauge is sensitive, so take your time. See how I overshot it? Now I have to turn it back and forth until I get it on 0. So now with a steady hand, I've got it set to 0. Now we'll push in the knob to lock it and then hook up the gauge to the mower. The gauge shows that we're in the red, which is not a good sign. This gauge has been giving me fits, so I think there's a problem with the gauge, and I'll show you how I fixed it. So I dismantled the entire gauge and started running wires to make sure there's no blockages in the gauge. I shouldn't have to do this, but I know there's some blockage somewhere in here. So we'll turn over every stone until we've got it figured out. So after dragging wires through everything and blowing through the entire unit, we'll put it back together and try it again. With everything all set up again, we'll try it, and this time it changes and now it's moderate. This engine has a lot of hours, so this is more reasonable. So with the gauges working, I'll try it on another lawnmower. This engine also has about the same amount of hours, so I would expect about the same result. Yep, pretty close. And this engine runs like a top too. Now I'll test the gauge on a cylinder I know is in good shape. This cylinder is really good. It's only got 10% loss. You're never going to be at 100% because some compression is always going to go through the piston. So that's the basics on how to do a leak down test. I appreciate your time and thanks for watching.